Hi, my name is Clara, and this is the video of my final exam for ICT. As a heads up, my activities are designed for deaf kids enrolled in the Hearing Disability program, but could also be implemented as a workshop for able students. Now let's dive into the initial details of my project. My activities are designed for students in the 5th grade of primary. Now, the curriculum goals. I have divided them in the two subjects this activity are about. We have natural sciences, which have these specific competencies, and on the other hand, we have Spanish Sign Language. Now, this is a subject only available in 5th and 6th grade of primary for students enrolled in the Hearing Disability program. The student's profile. The class consists of 10 students with some kind of hearing impairment. Now, most of them are not completely deaf and were not born deaf, which means that sign language is not their first language. They are usually very participative in class and are very engaged with the content. For the AI inquiry part, I use DeepSeek. I designed this specific prompt describing my students, what I needed to do, and a bit of my general ideas. And this was DeepSeek's answer. I like to mention that because I included the specific names or the operational descriptors in the prompt, they tried to include them in the answer. However, they were mostly incorrect or inaccurate. For the first activity, I will do something similar to what DeepSeek suggested. It said to use augmented reality to explore whole body anatomy. However, I will use augmented reality to focus on the anatomy of just the internal ear. Using augmented reality is not just to play and not learning. Studies like this one prove that using augmented reality in classrooms can boost learning in natural sciences. For the second activity, it suggested stop motion about a sign language story. However, because it is a story, I think the comic option will be more appropriate. Creating comics in primary school can promote meaningful learning opportunities, as this study in Ukraine suggests. For the last activity, DeepSeek suggested to do an activity using a programmable robot. However, because I do not own one, I couldn't use that. Instead, after doing some research, I found a really cool app that can help students learn new sign language vocabulary through a game-based learning approach. The three activities will revolve around deafness. All of them can be done in one 45-minute class, so it's up to the teacher to do all of them during one day or in 3 separate days. This is the step-by-step students will have to follow. We can either print them to give them to each student or project them at the beginning of the lesson. Hi, good morning. Today, we're gonna learn the parts of the ear. We will be using an app on our tablet using augmented reality. But why are people deaf? We will click on the app Object Viewer, and then on the option Anatomy of the Ear, and then on this option. Once it's loaded, we will click on the option of World and follow the instructions on the tablet. In the hologram, 7 main parts of the internal ear will appear. We can ask students to name all of them, and we can also give a brief explanation of what each part is. The pinna is the outer part. The external auditory canal is the tube that sounds goes through. The tympanic membrane is the eardrum. The ossicles are the tiny bones inside. The semicircular canals help with balance. The cochlea looks like a snail but turns sounds into signals. Then we can give a brief explanation of what hearing loss consists of. As many of you will know, there are many types of hearing loss. Now, one type is when the cochlea or auditory nerve don't work, so the signals of the sounds can't reach the brain. Another type is when the eardrum doesn't work, so the sound can't work and travel through the ear and returns, so it never reaches the brain. Then students will have to fill a worksheet. The first activity is about naming all of the parts of the ear. The second activity is about matching the explanation of the part of the ear with the name. Finally, we can end the lesson by asking the students some questions like, what was the thing that caught your eye the most? Or what did you find really interesting? What was your favorite part of this activity?
This is the step-by-step students will have to follow throughout the lesson.
Hello, good morning. Today, we will be learning sign language vocabulary. We will use a game app in our tablets. So we will click on the activity and go to the main page where we can explore some basic signs of the alphabet, colors, and numbers. Then we have to go to the trivia section where we will actually unlock the next levels and other units. The game has another game mode called Pasa de Signo, very similar to the game Pasapalabra, where students will have to guess the signs. My favorite color is red. And yours? Pretty! My favorite color is pink. At the end of this lesson, we could ask students some questions to promote metacognition. For example, do you think learning vocabulary is easy when you do it through images? What about through games? Will you use this app at home? Why or why not?
This is the step-by-step students will have to follow throughout the lesson.
Hello, good morning. Today, we will create a comic. We will use an app on our tablet called Pixton. Our story is going to be about a deaf girl who is anxious about making new friends. Now, it would be a good idea to start the lesson by asking students if they have ever felt this way, and when do they feel it, how do they deal with it, and most importantly, how can they solve this? Using Pixton is very easy. You just have to create a new comic, select your background, there are many choices, select a pre-existing character or create your own. You can add words or thoughts. You can even add objects, animals, notebooks. You will also be able to change their facial expression and body action. At the end of the lesson, each student could share their comic and explain how did the girl feel at first and how did she solve her problem. Anyways, this is an example that I did of what this activity would look like. These three technological activities add a significant value by moving beyond passive learning. The AR ear anatomy lesson transformed difficult abstract concepts into visual and interactive experiences. With the Pixton comic, students were able to express their experiences and perspectives. And with Incluseñas was a digital game-based learning approach that proved that students can learn while also having fun. We can use the RICT model to visualize how impactful these tools really are on learning. The Merge Cube is interactive and transformative. Interactive because the students are actively interacting with the Merge Cube, and transformative of this teacher's use of technology because it doesn't just replace or amplify, it transforms. Using the Merge Cube, the students are the ones in charge of their own learning. They can follow their own pace. Additionally, it transforms how the students receive all the information. Following the RICT model, the comic Pixton app was the one with the greatest impact, as students were actively creating using technology. Finally, the app Incluseñas was interactive and transformative, the same with the Merge Cube. So we can see that these tools really have a great impact on students' learning. Therefore, we can conclude that using technology for these specific activities is a positive thing. I have designed some rubrics to assess students' performance throughout these tasks. For the first activity, for the second activity, and for the last activity. Using the rubric for e-learning tool evaluation, I have assessed the 3 tools I use for my activities: Object Viewer, Incluseñas, and Pixton. The main concern with Incluseñas is related to the technical part, as it is only available for Android devices. However, it is very accessible and completely free. You also don't have to log in to use this app. The main concern with Object Viewer was the teaching presence parts and the privacy policies. With Pixton, we don't have any major issues in the teaching presence except for the learning analytics. However, we have some issues with the social presence as it doesn't allow any type of collaboration. In conclusion, most of them struggle with the privacy concerns as they require to log in, and Object Viewer and Pixton both only offer a trial or free version, so you have to pay to have the complete one. And this is how I have used the ACAD framework to articulate the learning design of my project. Digital game-based learning is an educational approach that combines digital game elements with academic content. As a future primary school teacher, I will use digital game-based learning to create a fun lesson to check English vocabulary. For example, for animals, after doing my lesson, I would create a fun quiz where I could quickly check students' understanding while students can also enjoy their learning. According to Adele and Castañeda, we can define PLE as a set of tools, connections, resources, and activity each person regularly uses to learn. A PLE has 3 main components: reading, doing and reflecting, and discussing. Being aware of your own PLE can help boost your learning and teaching. Let's say, for example, I have to make a presentation about inclusive education. I can search for information online, reading scientific articles. I can make my presentation and then reflect about my performance, and I can also discuss about the topic with other classmates or through forums or other type of social media. The Merge Cube is an interactive app that can turn this cube into a hologram. As we have seen in our class tasks, this tool can be very useful to create fun and engaging activities. In our group, we use the Merge Cube to create an activity about the water cycle. This can be very useful as students can visually learn theoretical concepts that may be difficult to comprehend. Padlet is an interactive online tool that can serve as a virtual bulletin board. One example of how Padlet can be used for me is, for example, to create class notes collaboratively. Let's say educational psychology. We can create a subsection within Padlet that says constructivism, and then all of our classmates can upload all of the information they have about that specific topic. Then we can collect all of the information and create our own study book. The Compedu is a framework that defines the digital competencies educators need to effectively teach and empower learners in a digital age. The 3 areas of the Compedu framework that I consider more relevant are teaching and learning, assessment, and empowering learners. Teaching and learning. This area covers planning, implementing, and managing digital enhanced lessons such as blended learning, flipped classroom, or interactive multimedia content like the Merge Cube. Why is it relevant? Digital tools can make lessons more dynamic, support different learning styles, and encourage active learning. For example, during this course, I've learned how important it is to carefully plan when using digital tools, thinking about whether students will understand and enjoy them. I've also realized the importance of knowing how the tool works and being ready in case it doesn't. For example, when we used the Kodiroki and it didn't work properly, we hadn't planned for that, so we didn't know how to react. But in later tasks, we made sure to even prepare for small issues. Assessment. This means using digital tools to improve current assessment strategies and create new, more effective ways to assess learning. Why is it relevant? In my opinion, it is the most important aspect, as through feedback, you can know if your used tool is effective. For example, throughout this course, one of the key points our Professor Linda has emphasized is the importance of feedback and reflection. That's why many groups, including mine, started using tools like Mentimeter to collect feedback after our presentations or activities. I find this really valuable because it lets you see your performance from another perspective. We also learned to assess digital tools using the e-learning rubric. Empowering learners. It's about using digital technologies to enhance inclusion, personalization, and learners' active engagement. Why is it relevant? It's essential because it fosters independence, personalized education, enhances engagement, and lets the student be the active creator, which is exactly what Linda has emphasized throughout every activity, that students should be active creators, not just passive participants. For example, in the comic activity of this project, learners had full freedom to design characters, write dialogues, and even design their own ending, putting them in charge of their own learning. For this subject, I think I have earned a grade of 9. I am aware that I have made mistakes, for example with the Cody task, but as a group and me personally, I think that we were able to learn from our mistakes, which I think is a very valuable aspect. I have demonstrated commitment. I tried to participate in every class when possible. I think I have also tried to give my best in every task, giving creative solutions to all of the problems and other aspects. I have also considered myself the mediator of our group whenever we have any problems, to try to reach to an agreement so everyone was happy. Out of all the roles throughout this course, the most complicated for me was the analyst role. Because I had to grade my group members who also happened to be my friends, grading their work honestly was complicated while also maintaining positive relationships. I wanted to be fair, but I also didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. This role has obligated me to balance objectivity with empathy, which was really hard, but I think this is a valuable learning experience. I have used DeepSeek throughout this exam. First, to do the initial activities, but as I mentioned, it used false information, and while some of the ideas were creative, I prefer to use my own, but with some inspiration in the AI response ones. In my opinion, using AI is not the real problem. It's when you upload the task to the AI and copy-paste their answer without any previous thoughts or analyzing what it has said. However, that is not my case. I am an avid user of AI. I think they are of great value. For example, to create summaries, to create schemas, images, to correct grammatical mistakes, to rephrase unnatural paragraphs. However, I always make sure that whatever I turn in is my work with AI corrections, not AI work with some of my corrections. This is the bibliography I have used for making this project.
In the transcription of this video, all of the resources I have used are available. This includes all of the presentations I have created as well as the worksheets.
Well, that's the end of my exam. I hope you enjoyed it.